Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT Sports. So Doc Rivers, the current coach of the 8-12 as we shoot this Los Angeles Clippers, former championship-winning coach of the Boston Celtics, has really come under fire because I think we're slowly realizing that he's an okay coach. He's not amazing. He's not on the Popovich level, but he's not like down in the dumpster like Jim Boylan, Chicago Bulls level.
Right.
So here's just a few notes going over the history of Doc Rivers. So here is his coaching record overall. Look, the wins and losses, if you take out the 1-10 Orlando Magic, it still doesn't matter. There's some rough patches here, and you gotta take into account as well that when the Celtics were successful was when Kevin McHale decided to literally give up Kevin Garnett for what would be a very, very injured Al Jefferson, along with many others. So moving forward, Doc Rivers, there's the coaching record. There were also a few quotes, I do believe, from respective parties. Here's Chris Paul when he decided to leave the Houston Rockets, or leave the Clippers for the Rockets. Quote, a lot of people see the wins and losses, but it's the culture of our team, which was their team. If you aren't trying to contend with the Warriors, then what are you doing? You know what I mean? The Warriors haven't lost in the playoffs. If you aren't trying to contend with them, then what are you doing? October 19th of 2017, to which Doc Rivers decided to reply via Rogan and Rodney, I believe it's in LA as well, said, quote, I think everybody's trying to compete with the Warriors. But last I checked, it's the players that are trying to compete. Oh, it's about the players now, Doc. It's the players that are trying to compete with them. I didn't play against the Warriors. You did. So he's responding to Chris Paul. I think it's so easy when you leave. Coaches do it, players do it, to try and put the house on fire when you leave and you had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? No, I don't. So let's leave this up for just a second. Can we go back for one moment? That second line is really, really, really important. Last I checked, it's the players that are trying to compete with them. I didn't play against the Warriors, you did. Keep that into account, and then we move forward. Chris despises Doc, said one Clipper source. The tipping point came when Doc nixed a trade that would have sent Carmelo and Sasha Vujacic to the Clippers. But who would they have to give up? Not Jamal Crawford, not Paul Pierce, Austin Rivers. The most important part of this entire effing deal. My God, the Clippers were considered a top suitor due to Anthony's no trade clause in part because of the close relationship between Anthony and Paul because they're Banana Boat brothers. June 28th of 2017. Are you bleeping kidding me? So, you know how I feel. Thoughts?
You know,
lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, absolutely. So the question that we're circling back to is whether or not Doc is a good or bad coach. Now,
can we just react to that for a second? Like the players, not me, I didn't play. Like you are manipulating the game in your favor. You are an important piece.
You know what? The whole pointing fingers, it's a really immature tactic to go with, and he knows exactly what he means when he's saying something like that. The fact that he's like, oh, you know, I'm not the one that played, you know, against the Warriors.
Right.
Putting all this weight and heat on the Clippers individually is the worst thing a coach can do. Is the absolute worst thing a coach can do. Like, let a player say, you know what, he should have done this and he should have done that. But the fact that it's like your parents saying, well, you know, Tommy, like, Junior here, you guys were in the same class. You know, like, it's just like you want us to fight against each other.
What was that example?
Yeah, it's one of those where, like, you're both in the same class, you're both young, and your parents are choosing one over the other. That's okay, you'll get there. But it's one of those where you, as a coach, you can't put the heat on one player. Like, you have to take ownership. You have to recognize that essentially this is a team that you created. And now with Chris Paul gone, it's still this. We're seeing the repercussions of what a team like the Clippers would be without Chris Paul. And it's a team that Doc created. So it's a mess that he has to clean up. And everyone's pointing fingers at Doc. The easiest thing for me to do is to, all right, Doc. LA might not be for you.
Favors?
It's like, it's walking. LA might not be the team for you. Not right now, at least. I'm not saying that he's a bad coach. He's definitely proved to be a great coach at one point and carried. He was a good coach, man. He was a good coach. He didn't walk in like being a trash coach. He wouldn't have taken the Celtics to where they got if it wasn't for his coaching. He had good coaching at one point, and I felt like he was like everyone. He was trying to do.
So he had good coaching for 1 year when they won, or like 3 years, 4 years.
He had good coach. He's had good coaching under his belt. He's had good coaching under his belt.
Oh, I don't know, man.
Now, right now, is not the case. Right now is not the good coaching period for him. And the fact that he's trying to carry the success that he had at one point with the Celtics, and he tried to carry it over to the Clippers. Obviously, everyone saw how much of a failure that was. And then he's still slowly trying to aim and create this winning team. And just the Austin Rivers trade, not surprising, disappointing, not surprising. But it just showed where his mind is as a coach and not like the championship coach that we were used to.
Okay, so a lot to take in. I'm going to react after we hear Amin El Hassan, who is a phenomenal. We're doing a show right now, Mom. So it wasn't my mom. So Amin El Hassan is a hilarious NBA analyst for ESPN, and he broke this down in typical hilarious fashion. So take a look and then we'll discuss.
Do you play for me? If yes, welcome to the Clippers. Get a $sign right there. If not, we go to the next question. Have you played well against me in the playoffs? If yes, welcome to the Clippers, Josh. If no, the third question is, we ever played in our driveways before? If yes, welcome to the Clippers.
Dude,
it's true.
It's true.
It's
man.
true.
It's the sad truth.
We laugh through the pain, and I'm not even a Clippers fan. Okay,
It's
so
the sad truth.
Going back real quick, I understand your point.
He's a good coach.
About him being a good coach. You said that he was a great coach.
Okay, good.
I
great.
don't think he's a great coach. I think a lot of good coaches can win championships.
Right.
Great coaches sustain it. That's why we regard the Popoviches and the Phil
Agreed.
Jacksons
Fair,
and
fair.
what have you in a different light than we do a Doc Rivers.
That's fair.
I do not believe that he was the driving force behind the Celtics. It was obviously the players, and I don't even believe that Doc Rivers had as much.
You don't think he had a role in that? You're saying
He had a role. My point is he had less of a role than Kevin Garnett did because he was the vocal leader of that team. So I'm not gonna like give Doc 100% of the credit. I'd give him for a pie.
Some kind of percentage.
For a pie here, I would give him probably about 35% of them winning. Now, here's the other thing. They had this core together, all right, in the Eastern Conference. I understand that they ran into LeBron towards the tail end, okay?
Right.
For this big three, really big four,
Right.
to win one championship in
Right.
Boston, disappointing. As we now look back on the careers
Yeah.
of Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo is barely playing. It's incredibly disappointing that
Right.
they had Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and Rajon Rondo and a really good sustainable bench, and they only
Had a
won a
great bench.
single championship. It is
Should have won at least 3.
Sincerely disappointing. Thank you,
Yeah.
Greg. They should have won. He's a Boston fan. Now, obviously, his bias is going to be very different from ours, but I agree with him. He got in our ears and said they should have won 3. They should have at least won 2. It's inexcusable that when you have that sort of talent that rings true in the East, and also the NBA being a star-driven league, that you only won a single championship.
Right.
That is indefensible for Doc Rivers. And I think it proves my point that he's just not that good of a coach. We thought he was when he won.
Is he good or bad? It's one or the other.
It's not one or the other. Like
If you had to choose.
RIP to his tenure here, but like the Rubenmeister would do tiers. Like he's not a first tier guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's like a second, maybe third tier guy. I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan, and I'm not a fan of not achieving. Not fulfilling your potential.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like with the Clippers, he's just 1 second away from just being let go just from that franchise, because it doesn't make sense for him to stay at this point. The Clippers right now, they're all 30% from the field. Like, it's so hard for Blake.
What?
Yeah, they're shooting 30% from the field right now.
Oh my God.
It's horrible. Shooting 30%. Blake, I mean, he hasn't
he has a torn
reached
MCL,
40.
so
he hasn't reached 40 in like 2 weeks before he tore this. So he hasn't reached 40 before that. He hadn't. And so the fact that you have great players, you bring in Patrick Beverley, who's prone to an injury, like
And is also a great defensive player.
He's
very
a great
limited
defensive player, but he's also prone to an injury. Like, it's not a player that, at least with Chris Paul leaving, it's not a player that for me would make sense to bring over. You can't compare the two.
Well, I mean, that's another great point, is that you brought over Paul Pierce to be like this.
Right.
I understand if you want to have a veteran guy, but he was, putting him in late game situations, thinking that he could, really channel his Kansas Jayhawk days. Look, the fact is, with what Amin said, that has simply been the formula. Like, have you played with me?
Right.
Have you killed me? Have you played in my driveway?
Right.
I'm going to sign you.
Right.
And that is the science of Doc Rivers. Where do you all stand? Where do they leave the thoughts?
In the comments below.
And what else do they do?
Like and subscribe.